Good afternoon, Patriots. This is the American Vision, broadcast on the TLBTV network and sponsored by the Liberty Beacon Project. I'm your host, Bill Muckler, and I'm coming to you from my studio in Cocoa, Florida. And today I've got a special guest from the St. Louis, Missouri area, TJ Moe. And TJ, welcome to the show. We're really glad they decided to have you on.
Bill, thanks for having me, man. I have seen your stuff up on Facebook for years.
Yeah, I've become a celebrity in my own time for whatever reason, but I appreciate that. TJ is a Mizzou graduate, and I have my Mizzou shirt on if anybody can see that. And TJ, tell us a little bit about yourself. You're from St. Charles County, and you went to Fort Zumwalt West High School, and kind of take it from there and give us a little bit of what you've done.
Yeah, so like you said, 2009, I was a graduate of Fort Zumwalt West High School. I played quarterback there and received a scholarship from Mizzou to go actually ended up playing slot receiver there. I was not super heavily recruited out of high school, but I had 4 or 5 offers. And I always kind of wanted to be a Mizzou guy. So went and played slot receiver there for 4 years, ended up having a decent enough career to sign with the New England Patriots for a year. My first year up there, tore my Achilles. Then I was released from the team the following March and spent a training camp with the Rams. Since that time, I've gotten into the radio business. Did 1 or 2 years, I think 1 year with, for any of your St. Louis people that remember, Jim Edmonds, a former center fielder for the Cardinals.
Yeah,
he and I did a show together. The guy Tim McKernan. I got out of radio for a little while, opened up a couple Smoothie Kings down in the South County area here, and then got back into the radio world about 1.5 years ago. So I do a show called The Hardline on 590 The Fan with Cam Jansen, Eric Messersmith, and John Hadley. So it's a fun day. You sit in a room and talk sports for a couple hours. That's not such a bad living.
No, and then you also do I guess it's like a video podcast on Facebook called Periscope.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. On so Twitter, Periscope is owned by Twitter. Periscope is basically the Twitter version of Facebook Live, and so it allows you to put videos inside of what you're doing with Twitter. So it'll just embed the video right there on your tweet. Mm-hmm. So I have that, and then I simulcast it on Facebook Live as well. So it's an internet show, internet podcast, actually. Just so you had a background and I wasn't just sitting behind a white wall. This is it's called Take No Offense. You can see it here, and this is our backdrop when we're doing the podcast.
Yeah, and anyway, I see on Facebook. I also have a Twitter account, and on Facebook I see this is your and I'm springing this on TJ, so he wasn't aware that I was going to do this, but this is your profile picture or your on Facebook. So tell us what does that mean, and where did it come from?
That comes from a television show, one of my favorite television shows ever. It's called Friday Night Lights, and they made a movie about it years ago. Maybe came out in, maybe could have been 2006, somewhere right around there, 2005 or 6. And it's about they later on made a TV show about it with Connie Britton and some of those, some of those actors have gone on to be somewhat high profile. However, that is it stems from, that's the slogan of a football team down in Texas, Permian, Texas, where everything's about football. It's like one of those cities where they shut down the entire city on Friday night. You can't even get a hamburger because everybody's at the football game. So that was their slogan in the locker room: clear eyes, full hearts, can't lose. And so that show ended, maybe 10 years ago. It ended a long time ago, and I still have had that as my cover photo and has been for about 5 years.
Oh, that's fantastic. So there is something behind it. I knew there had to be a story there. And there's another story I want to give everybody, and I don't know if anybody can see this, so I'm going to stand up, and you can see this is my Mizzou shirt, and I don't know if anybody can see the back. But anyway, this is TJ's TJ game jersey from Mizzou. And the reason I have this is my daughter was involved in a charity event for a Mizzou alum from St. Charles, Missouri, by the name of Curtis Brown, who played, I think, 5 years for the Buffalo Bills, and got involved in construction work, construction industry in St. Charles County and every way. And in any case, got to know my daughter real well. But he's suffering from CTE, and so they did a fundraiser for him, and TJ donated his jersey. And I told my daughter, I said, when she said, do you want to bid on anything? I said, what do you got? And she said, well, there's a TJ Moe jersey. And I said, get it. So she got it for me. TJ also doesn't know that I've been a big fan of his ever since I knew he was coming to Mizzou, and I watched all the games, so I saw a lot of exciting things. But I'd like for you to tell us a little bit about CTE, because that's something that's really a big issue for not only the pro football players, but college, high school, and even the younger kids now are getting concussions playing.
Yeah, so that CTE stands for, I don't even know if I can say this right, but chronic traumatic encephalopathy. And what that is, if you guys have seen the CTE movie with Will Smith, it's called Concussion.
Yeah.
And the idea is that the guy who actually discovered it, I'm trying to remember his name, Dr. Bennett Amalu. He discovered CTE, and he did it. There's actually a really good book on this too. And I cannot remember the name of that book, but there's a book that goes through and outlines basically what CTE, how it was discovered and who it was. Dr. Bennett Amalu came out, and he studied, I don't know if you remember, the old center for the Pittsburgh Steelers, Webster. He was the first guy, and he was like, back in the day, he played with Terry Bradshaw. So right. He was a guy who, I mean, now a center is 6'3", 315 pounds, and throwing guys around. This was a different build of a guy. This is a guy who was just tough as nails. And I think he was probably somewhere around 250 pounds, a smaller dude. Yeah. And that was a different time. So he basically started to go crazy. I'm really trying to remember the whole story. Mike Webster, that's his name. So Mike Webster basically started having hearing voices and all sorts of different things, and people just thought he was going nuts. What's his problem? And eventually, he was the first guy they ever found that had CTE. And what that is the way they described it. You come and when you have neurons shooting all the way through different pathways. They said, imagine your brain is like kitchen pipes, right? You got to send water down through to get to the other end and come out the spout, all that stuff. So that's how your neurons go shooting through things. Well, basically imagine putting cement in your kitchen pipes, and that's what happens. Like you can't think, you forget things. I mean, guys talk about it all the time. They start forgetting everything. They can't remember their wife's name. They can't remember what they did this morning. They start forgetting all these little things about their life. And then there's just constant pain. There was a guy, Dave Duran, I think his name was, the old Bears safety who was on that 85 Bears team. He committed suicide, blew his own head off. Mike Webster ended up committing suicide. A lot of these guys have, actually, if you watch the recent stuff with Aaron Hernandez. He stopped playing football when he was 24 years old and already had stage 4 CTE when they studied his brain after he committed suicide in prison after that double murder. So CTE is becoming a thing. Now, my personal opinion on it is that we are making a gigantic deal out of something that we know very little about. We know that it does exist. There right now are not tests that will allow you to discover it while somebody's living. You can only find out later on during a biopsy when you're studying their brain and basically take the entire thing apart after they pass away. So there's nothing you can do. You can try to adjust the rules. You can try to do a lot of different things. But what people are trying to infer is that everybody who played football has CTE, and I just don't think that's the case.
Yeah, and it's not only football either. It's soccer. They're talking about now young players aren't allowed to head the ball anymore, and I guess it even happens to some basketball players, hockey players. You got a hockey player on your Hardline show with you, by the way, who
A lot, yes.
Cameron, who's a St. Louis guy who is pretty tough guy in hockey, right?
Oh, absolutely. He's what you'd call an enforcer.
Mm-hmm.
His job, even he's my size, which is not very big. Okay, he is a little bit under 6 foot, 215, 220 pounds, and his job was to make sure that there was nobody on the ice that can mess with any of his guys. So if anybody messed with him, then he went over and then had said, "Hey, bud, let's drop the gloves and see what you got." And that was his job. I mean, you see his face; there are scars everywhere. Fortunately for him, he still has all his teeth somehow. But he spent a lot of his life getting punched in the face. He was in his life over 500 fights.
Oh wow! So, and that's something I guess nobody really knows what's going to happen or who it's going to happen to. And there's another thing I wanted to bring up and talk about, change the subject just a little bit, is we talk about colleges now and kids going to college and what kind of education they get and so forth. And then we have a lot of athletes that really benefit from their college education. And many of them, when they're growing up and they're little kids, and you probably were the same way. I know I thought the same way. We wanted to be a pro athlete, but less than 1% of college students get scholarships to go to college. And of the college, I should say NCAA athletics, there's 24 sports, and there's 460,000 NCAA athletes, of which less than 2% of them actually become pros or further their career in that. So my question is, what happens to the other 450,000? Because you're a perfect example of somebody who went from college, went to the Patriots, and then went to the Rams, and now you've got a great career on radio and in sports.
Yeah, you've got to. It's fascinating that you can go on different websites and they'll tell you just how rare it is, and they tell you that even when you're in high school, even if you're a good player, you have Division I offers. The chances of you going to the NFL, it's about between 1.5% and 2% if you're a Division I football player, and then you go from high school. There is a 0.08% chance a high school senior is ever going to play a down in the NFL. So you go on and see all that stuff and you say, okay, well, great. You look around at all the guys and say, well, it sucks for you guys, but I'm going to make it, right? But that's obviously not the case for most people. So it's important. I mean, I think I graduated with a 3.3 or 3.4 in college. And college, it gets to be pretty difficult to maintain everything because you just don't. It is so hard to care when you're getting ready to play Nebraska on a Thursday night about your Wednesday night test. It's just so hard to care, right? You know, I got a biology test, but then Dominican Sue might try to kill me. So which way am I trying to preserve my life or get a B? So it's a different. It is totally a different mindset, but you got to find a way to kind of fight through and take your stuff seriously. High school is much easier. I graduated high school with a 4.0, and I hardly took a book home. If you pay attention in class, you can get through high school and make sure that you get your degree. Look, if you can't get a high school diploma, I can't help you. I mean, they go through that study just period. I mean, this study was done by the Brookings Institute, and it said if you do 3 things, and as a human being, do 3 things: you graduate high school, which is not difficult. Don't get pregnant before you get married, also not difficult. And then the third thing, obviously, you get a full-time job, any job, period, doesn't matter. You will not remain in poverty in this country. Only 2% of the people that do that remain in poverty in this country. So even as a football player, anything, even if you don't get your college degree, say you went and you thought you were going to the NFL and you didn't take your stuff seriously, you should not be poor. I mean, that's sort of the thing. Don't knock up your girlfriend. Make sure you get married. You have that high school degree already. In order to even get in college, you have to have that diploma, and then you go on and get a job. And you really should. That is the thing. I mean, it's one of those deals where everybody has excuses for everything. And I didn't take it seriously. I don't care if you passed a single class in college. You shouldn't be poor in America today if you do those three things.
You just kind of hit home, because I really wasn't a very good student at Mizzou either. And in fact, I think my last semester I had my highest grade point average was about a 3.2 or something.
There you
go. And at high school, it was the same way. I guess I didn't take it as seriously as I could. It just seemed like it was too easy and sometimes too boring or whatever, a lot of excuses. But then I had an opportunity because I had got the college degree. Somehow I managed to, get through. And that Mizzou, and that's something that I wanted to tell everybody. TJ and I have some things in common. We're both from St. Charles, Missouri. We both are Mizzou graduates, and we're both on TV, I guess, if you want to call this TV. It's really kind of like radio podcasts that you can actually see the person who's talking is about what it boils down to. But it's interesting about the number of athletes that make it into the pros, and then all the rest, like you say, you need to find a job, and finding jobs is not hard to do. I've always been able to find a job no matter what. In fact, I've kind of worked all my life, kind of took a lot of pride in that.
Yeah.
One thing I want to bring up, when you were with the Patriots, that must have been quite an experience for you, because even though you played for Mizzou and great teams on a great coach and some great players, going from Mizzou, a university, and you were in the Big 12, I guess, and then transitioned into the SEC, which is football on steroids, or college football on steroids, right? I mean, that's the number one league. But then to go to the NFL, that must have really been a change, a challenge.
Yeah, crazy sort of followed me around for a few years. It was interesting. So I was in the same recruiting class as Michael Sam, who obviously became somewhat of an international sensation when he came out as the first gay player in Division I football. So then I go from there, which that is a media frenzy, if you can imagine. Everybody was going nuts about that. Then I go to New England, and Aaron Hernandez kills somebody. He goes to jail, so the media is all over that. And then Tim Tebow came to town for a while, so they're all over that. I mean, crazy just followed me around for a bit. But yes, it was absolutely a change. It's very, very different. These guys in college, it's a bunch of kids that you're just trying to get them when they're young to take it seriously and to study and do all the stuff you're supposed to do to be successful as a student athlete. And then you get to the pros, and what happens very quickly is you find out if this is not – it's not only your number one thing. If this is not your everything, you don't stand a chance. I mean, Tom Brady used to stand up inside of the weight room and practice his throwing motion. Keep in mind, I was there in 2013, so this was his 14th year in the league. He would stand there without a ball by himself practicing his throwing motion over and over and over. So that gives you an idea of just how seriously these guys take it. And specifically with the Patriots, who are kind of the model franchise of the last almost 2 decades now, those guys do things differently. And if you're not 100% all in on what Belichick wants you to be doing at that moment, he doesn't have time for you. He will let anybody walk. He will cut anybody. He cut Randy Moss. If he can cut Randy Moss, he will cut you.
Tell us a little bit about Bill Belichick, because he's really a mystery guy. Nobody knows anything about him.
Yeah, he's really funny. He's one of those guys who it's amazing how he can change between talking to his team and talking to the media, because he sort of uses the F word as like how you and I say he just says the F word. We're like, yeah, that is how. So you have to sort of filter through what he's saying. He is very funny, very, very dry sense of humor. But it's funny because he'll say something funny, and then we would all be laughing, and then he would sit there annoyed that we weren't listening to him anymore. So then, he's like, all right, enough with the laughing. I'm trying to teach you something. So it's that sort of thing. He is a very, very unique, very, very serious about what he's doing. I don't think I've ever met anybody as dedicated to their craft as he is in any industry, period. I mean, maybe a Marine, maybe a Navy SEAL, maybe some of you guys, because your life is truly dependent on what you're doing at that moment. But for people out in the regular non-life-threatening world, I'm not so sure I've ever seen anybody as dedicated to their craft and being the greatest ever as I've seen Belichick.
So in his life, is he a happy guy, or is he, what's it like, and what's it like for guys like Brady who are so dedicated to what they do?
Yeah, it's interesting because when I was there, they hadn't won a Super Bowl going on 10 years. They won it in 2004, and this was 2013. So it was, 8 or 9 years straight without winning a Super Bowl. So I think they were very dissatisfied that year. Now, they won the Super Bowl the next year, 2014, they beat the Seahawks. But the year that I was there, nobody was super happy. It was interesting. Devin McCourty, who was one of their Pro Bowl safeties, really, really good player, really smart player, still there. He's one of their captains. He's great. He and I signed with the same agency. And the first thing he told me he said, dude, listen, if we're not winning around here, it is miserable. And they do that on purpose because winning is just what unlocks the gate for them to treat you normally, because that's what's expected. You will be absolutely miserable if we're losing around here. And everybody wants you to be miserable because that's the atmosphere and that's not acceptable around here. So when you lose, they're going to let you know that's not ever going to be the standard around here. You better figure out how to win. And when you win, that's just normal. How you and I walk around our everyday life, when they win 12 games, 13, 14 games, that's just their normal feeling. If they win 8, good luck. They're about to set the building on fire.
So that's amazing because I guess many of us don't feel that way, and we take our jobs seriously, and some more than others, but I don't think we're ever into it to where we achieve that level of success, and also we have that level of commitment, because it really takes a lot.
It was interesting. I was talking to my on my podcast today. Actually, I was talking to a buddy of mine. So Tommy Pham lost his mind and went and spouted off to Sports Illustrated. And he really is a guy with a chip on his shoulder. That's just how he operates. And I remember thinking when I was in New England that Tom Brady had that same chip. He always felt slighted. And then when he wasn't, like, he's widely considered the greatest quarterback to ever play the game. Mm-hmm. But he always goes back to naming all the quarterbacks that got drafted before him and naming all the guys that have slighted him in his life, right? He's like Michael Jordan, right? If there's not somebody there who is criticizing him, he makes it up. So does Belichick, right? And what those guys do is, in order for them to continue that drive, they have to have that. That's one of their qualities. If they don't feel slighted and they don't feel, if they don't feel like somebody is against them, they cannot continue to excel at the rate that they are. So, but that's pretty miserable. Like creating something in your head that doesn't exist, just in order to be able to continue to work hard. And I mean, like, keep in mind, their Super Bowl is just their normal. That's just their equilibrium there, right? So when they lose, now they're so far off kilter that they can't hardly function as a normal human. Look at it. Jordan's the greatest ever, and that's what it takes. Brady's the greatest ever, and that's what it takes. Belichick's the greatest ever. That's what it takes. I get it. However, I think just in general in their lives, they're all very discontent. They probably wouldn't tell you that. Jordan actually would be honest about that. Michael Jordan has said as much, that he is flat miserable without basketball. That's his life. That's his world. He has to compete. He has to win. That's why he bet somebody $100,000 on a single putt in golf, because he has to have that competition and winning. I think they're all similar, and I just from an observational standpoint, I don't want any part of that. I want to be content in my faith. I want to be content in my life, with my family, with my friends, and my job. And I want, yes, we should be striving to win, and yes, we should give every ounce of effort during the time. But for your entire life to be centered around winning, and that's all that matters. Because at some point, hey, Tom Brady turns 40 this year. He's already 40. He's 40 years old. At some point, he's not going to keep playing football. So to be continually miserable when you're not just beating someone else, like all of your satisfaction is proving that you're the greatest in the world and that nobody can beat you and they just got to pound you down. That's a pretty miserable existence. And I get it. That's what it takes to be the best. But, man, I wouldn't trade lives with that.
But in one case, though, TJ, you must have caught some of Tom Brady's passes in practice and so forth. What was that like?
Oh, it was great. Tom throws about the best pass you can imagine. Everything's perfect spiral, floats into your hands, and perfect accuracy right where it needs to be. That is don't get me wrong. Do I want Tom to be my quarterback? Yes. Do I want Tom's attitude of being miserable all the time if I'm not winning Super Bowls? No.
Okay, that's great. Yeah, you talked about your show, and you're on daily in St. Louis on 590 The Fan, and your show is called The Hardline. Tell us a little bit about that, and hopefully there's some people watching will tune in, because I can listen to you down here, because it's we can go to your to the 590 webpage and click on and listen to it.
Yeah, there's also the Hardline STL Facebook page. We Facebook Live almost all of our shows. So yeah, it's the show came together kind of uniquely. That I was not in radio at the time. Neither was Cam Jansen. He had just gotten done playing. I was trying to get those Smoothie King businesses up and running. And Tim McKernan, who was running the station at the time, just sat us down and said, "Hey, I want to put a show together. I think we got a pretty good point guy, Eric Messersmith, and I want you two guys to kind of be the builders of this thing." So we started out with a couple other people, Hannah Yates, who is going to be a star someday whenever that time hits. She is a reporter. Will probably be a sideline reporter at some point on the SEC network or somewhere out there. And then Matt Whitener was a guy. So that since that time, those two Hannah's doing some other work there. Matt does some other radio stuff in town. So it's just the three of us. And then John Hadley eventually came in and joined the show. So we had that group together, and that was November of 2016. So November 2016, we went all the way through 2017. So it's been about a year and a half now. It really is a fun deal. I mean, we sit around and talk about sports, and it's kind of a unique show because we get into politics. I think all of us follow politics enough to give at least an educated opinion, whether or not we're right. I think a lot of people disagree with us, but I am a very conservative overall. So, and I like politics. I don't like politics all the time. I think it's draining, but I like to be informed about the smart things that is happening in the world, the dumb things that are happening in the world, and why and what works with the economy and such. So we get into those kind of topics. And then it's interesting because of the Colin Kaepernick stuff and because of protests, and LeBron James likes to get into it. Politics and sports intersect so frequently now that even when we're talking sports, we end up talking politics and veering off into what's acceptable, what's not acceptable so often that if you do sports talk radio, then you have to be able to at least give somewhat of a educated opinion when you're talking politics, or you sound pretty silly.
And I'm all of a sudden embroiled in politics, and I never wanted to be. And I ended up getting into it because I used to always talk about how dysfunctional our federal government was. And I was working as a consultant, and I was always traveling. So I was usually working with a team of maybe 3 or 4 or 5, 6 people. And they'd always say, "Hey, why don't you write those rants of yours down?" So that's what I ended up doing, writing a book. And TJ, I got to tell you, I almost flunked freshman English at Mizzou. I couldn't write anything. I couldn't come up with, when it came to creative writing, I couldn't come up with a subject, and I couldn't put anything together. And I don't know what it was like when you went there, but we had these things called blue books.
Yeah. Those were horrible. Because you'd sit there and somebody would tell you, all right, write every thought you have, and it's just a blank canvas of nothing. It was horrible. Actually, my worst story about that, I took a history class my freshman year. And we had this guy, there was no technology. He wrote on a chalkboard. right? I'm like, we don't even have an overhead. This guy would just sit up there and talk, and he would write the overall subject on a chalkboard, and it was horrible. So, and I would have to sit there, and I'm like, thank goodness I paid attention in class and actually know how to take notes, like Roman numeral, 1 and all that such. So we had, this was horrible. We had a midterm that was worth 40% of our grade. We had to read 6 books, and I didn't read any of them. And those quizzes were 10% of our grade. And then the final was 50% of our grade. So I did not do well on again, keep in mind, this is the first class I ever took at Mizzou. So we had 40% of our grade did not do well, didn't read any of the 10 books, obviously didn't do well, any of the 6 books. And then I had to take the final. So I studied, I spent about 24 straight hours at Waffle House studying. They don't close, And so we get in there, and they write, this is post 1865 history, and the guy writes one question. That's all it is, one question on the board. It says, tell me the answer to this. And in that blue book, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, I don't know the answer. So I'm like, I'm going to fail this class. My first class I ever took at Mizzou, I'm going to fail. So I, again, post 1865 is Civil War. So we're writing about the Civil War, and then I went, and seriously, every ounce of knowledge that I had, I wrote in my final sentence, because this is 2009. My final sentence was, and in 2008, Barack Obama became the first black president of the United States. And that's how I finished up. Every ounce of what I knew from 1865 to 2008, I wrote down, and the guy gave me an A. He said he doesn't know the answer, but he learned a lot in this class.
That's a great story. I love it. So anyway, what's in the future for you? Anything beyond what you're doing now? Because I think you'd be a great analyst, because I've watched some of your shows where you're analyzing football, and you're really good at this. Really good at it.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, we'll see what the future holds here. I want to continue to advance in radio. I think I like sitting around, learning all the topics, learning all the different things, but obviously my expertise is in football, having played it for 17 years. So learning the X's and O's and what all goes into it, and studying film and that sort of stuff is pretty easy. So yeah, I would like to eventually, if I could manage to get onto a network, which seems like you need to have won a Heisman Trophy in order to do that. But if at some point I can manage to get on one of the networks, SEC network, Pac-12 network, whatever that would be, or whatever, even calling games. I've talked to Mizzou, it hasn't happened yet, but I've talked to Mizzou about potentially getting in the radio booth and calling some of those games. So yeah, I really like the media world. I think media right now is changing. It is so unique because like ESPN and Fox and CBS, like everybody is losing subscribers at a rapid pace. And so their current business model, because of cord cutting, is being turned on its head. So ESPN had, hundreds of millions of dollars, or billions of dollars that they made every year. Think about it. ESPN pays $2 billion per year just to show 16 or 17 Monday Night Football games. That's it. 16 or 17 games, they pay $2 billion a year to the NFL to do that. Well, that's being floated largely by your Aunt Gladys, who has never seen a football game before, but that's in her cable bundle, and she's paying $7, I think it's up to $8 now, to ESPN as part of that bundle. Well, now it's going to the a la carte sort of model where people can either cord cut all together and just go watch Netflix and they don't care, or they're going to have eventually something where you can just pick your 12 channels. There's YouTube TV now where they have 40 channels. You can have a whole bunch of different things where you can put things together just what you like. So pretty soon, the guys like you and I who like to watch sports are not going to be subsidized by the other 80% of the population who really doesn't care too much about our sports. So all of that's changing. So that model's being turned on its head to some degree. So all this extra money that you had from subscribers is going away. So you're going to have to do better through advertising, and the real talent is going to rise to the top here. And you've got to be very creative about how you provide your content and get it out to people, which is why I do that show on Periscope and do it on Facebook Live, because these big corporate companies may not be around certainly at the standard they are today for that much longer.
I know, just like what I'm doing, the guys at TLB talked to me for like 2 years trying to get me to do this. And I said, I don't know how to do this. I've never been on TV or anything like that before. I did do a radio podcast where some guys talked me into doing that for them for a while. but everybody's a volunteer on this, but it's really it's growing, and there's more and more people watching TV on their computers. Or I can go and this will end up being a TV, a YouTube video, and I can go on my big smart TV, my big 70-inch or whatever it is, 60-inch Samsung, and I can watch the YouTube channel. And I'll be able to watch our show on my TV set. And there's more and more people that are doing that now, because on smart TV, it's all there.
Oh, absolutely. So yeah, everything's changing. I mean, I think at some point in the next 10 to 15 years, you're going to be able to get in your car and just say, hey, I want to listen to Bill talk about today's topic. Seriously, I think it's all going to be voice recognized. There's going to be like a pseudo iPad as opposed to your radio dial. You're just going to say, Bill Muckler, I want to listen to him talk about Oprah's presidential decision today.
Yeah, and that's another thing. You probably be able to watch it on in your car, because now they're building cars that they say within 2 or 3 years, driverless cars, and they're talking about driverless trucks that can drive clear across the country delivering goods, and driverless taxi cabs. I mean, I don't know what happens to Uber when they do that, but I'm having a hard time thinking, I don't know if I want to be on the road with a bunch of cars that don't have a driver.
Yeah, I don't know who it is. I cannot remember. Somebody's getting sued right now and having to discontinue the self-driving car because it killed somebody. Have you heard about that?
Yeah, that was Tesla. That was one of the Tesla cars.
Yeah, so they're going to have to do some serious fine-tuning in order to get that to go. But yeah, I mean, you've heard some of the guys, like my brother just went to a seminar, and basically it was a bunch of people projecting the future, and the idea is what industries are going to be completely obsolete very soon. And one of the, they got into, I don't know what the industry were. I didn't go to the seminar, but he was taught, they were just projecting different things like you're never going to need this. For instance, one of the things they talked about basically is any upfront teller at like your McDonald's, any person working the counter, anything, they're just going to have a kiosk. Why would they waste money on paying somebody, specifically in the states like Washington, who want to go to $15 an hour? Why would they spend $15 an hour on somebody who just wants to stand there and take an order? Why do they need that? Just have somebody walk up there and put in their order on a kiosk, and then they can have everything automated. Why do they need you? They said they're projecting a lot of those jobs to be gone. And one of the things they said, though, I said it's actually going to be amazing here in the future. We're going to look back and say, people actually died in car wrecks. How is that possible? Because nobody's going to ever, like, it's going to be computerized. They're basically, I mean, think about where it could be. In 20 years, there may not be stoplights, right? Because everything is computerized, where it could be like every other car is set up. Like you're a car length and a half away from everybody, and the everything just intersects. Always, like you're just going across traffic, and there's like 135, 135, and then 135, and you may get there twice as fast because you never have to stop. Like it could be totally nuts coming up in the future. The efficiency level could be off the charts here in what we're doing. And think about that too. Like imagine that you're a real estate agent on your way home, your self-driving car is getting you there twice as fast, and you can sit there with Wi-Fi in your car and write up the entire contract of the house you just sold and be done by the time you get home. I mean, our efficiency level is going to go way up.
Yeah. And, I just thought of something. I said, I don't know if I want to be on the road with cars that don't have drivers. And I'm thinking about, I don't know if I want to be on the road with cars with drivers anymore.
Exactly right.
And well, we're getting a little far afield from sports, and I got a picture of I got some pictures I stole from TJ's web Facebook page, and so you see him there scoring a touchdown, and I remember, I think it was your first touchdown, or maybe not, but I think it was one of the pre-conference games, and it might have been against somebody like Bowling Green,
Illinois.
Against Illinois,
Yeah.
and but anyway, I remember you going down the left sideline, and it was long, what, 50, 60 yards?
Okay, so that you're talking about San Diego State, looking at right there. That was a 68-yard touchdown. We had 58 seconds left in the game. We were down by 4. I mean, it was like thunderstorm, lightning. It was really a horrible game. We played terrible. That was a Brady Hoke coach team. He eventually, I think the next year, took the job at Michigan. And we had not played well, but they had a good team. Ronnie Hillman was a running back who played. He was a second-round pick for the Broncos. He had an 80-yard touchdown against us and a 90-yard touchdown against us. So we were struggling. We had just thrown an interception, and we didn't think we were going to get the ball back. And they ran out of bounds. Ronnie Hillman ran out of bounds, saved us a timeout. We ended up getting the ball back, I think somewhere in the ballpark of a minute 20 or so. Jarrell Jackson had a 20-yard catch because we had the ball at the 12-yard line. He had a 20-yard catch, had the ball at the 32. Then, took the snap, and it was just a little out route. And they were playing a cover 0 defense, meaning there's no safety back. So if a guy missed, you were off and running, and the guy missed, we were off and running.
And I don't have any photos. I tried to see if I could figure out how to get them, but I'm not technologically advanced enough to do it. But I wanted to get a couple of those shots of you giving the stiff arm to Kansas Jayhawk players that you had on your show on Monday, on the Periscope on Monday.
Yeah, that was. I do this thing annually, where with about 4 minutes left in the game that Kansas is about to lose to get bumped from the tournament, I just walk up and take pictures of all the sad Kansas fans, all the crying players, all the fans, everybody who's angry. I enjoy that very much. So then what I do is I put together my collection, and one by one I narrate the pictures. And so all the poor overweight kids that when people make fun of them, and I'm not into fat shaming, but if you're a Kansas fan, then I'm definitely into fat shaming. So you get into some of that, and it gets to be a lot of fun. Again, I don't know any of these kids, but I'm really glad they're sad.
I know. And I just really enjoyed you making fun of Jayhawkers, and I guess we shouldn't do that. It's probably politically incorrect, and we're not. I don't know the right word to use or whatever. We're not. We're being offensive, which is, by the way, a word I want to eliminate from the English language. Let's get rid of the word offense. Yeah, hey, I love that.
There it is.
Okay. Hey, this has really been great. It's been a pleasure talking with you, and we got to get a chance to know you and everything. So let's wrap it up. Any last sentiments or words you want to pass on?
No, man, I enjoy your stuff. Keep after this. It's been a lot of fun. I told you I've been seeing your stuff on Facebook for years now, so you got a good thing going. Keep it going.
Yeah, it's a new career for me. I've retired from consulting, and it's something you said before I wanted to bring up before we leave. My last consulting experience was in 2013, and my company, just a small consulting company, we got put out of business when they put the coal companies out of business and the power plants, because that was my whole consulting thing at that time, was consulting for power plants and coal mines. But I traveled every week, and I used to fly just about every time I flew out of Florida here. I flew out of Orlando, and I'd have to go through Detroit to get someplace. If I was going to Pittsburgh, I had to go through Detroit, wherever I was going. And I get to Detroit on Sunday afternoon, early evening, and I'd want to get a bite to eat. And I go to walk down the concourse, and there's all the places there, and there's nobody working there. You just go in and you put your credit card in, and you press all the buttons on there, and you get your burger and fries and your drink or whatever the heck you're going to get, and that's it. I mean, you don't even pay any money. You just put your credit card in, and then there is somebody back there that I guess prepares the food and hands it to you, but that's it.
Yeah, that's the future.
So anyway, I wish you well, my friend, in the future, and good luck to you. And keep up the good work, and really enjoy watching your shows. So anyway, we'll say goodbye. I'm gonna pause this a little bit, and I'm gonna give myself a little commercial on my book. And anyway, TJ, take care.